Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, they travelled from Europe to Syria so they can fight alongside rebel groups. But now that some are back home, what should be done with them? The stream's digital producer is Malika Bilal. Malika, there is a really important aspect of this story that involves social media. What are you finding?
Well, many of these alleged foreign fighters are pretty active on social media and they're sharing memes that some might describe as surreal.
Okay.
They share images like this that are typically seen as humorous. This is one that's shared a lot, a woman crying. And this next one is one that uses a character from the US cartoon The Simpsons. These images that are on one hand humorous are being used to promote acts of violence. This one calls against the murtadeen, or apostates, those who leave the religion. So we'll discuss that in today's show. We can't do it without you though. It's a live conversation. Tweet us your questions and your comments with #AJStream.
Hi, I'm J.M. Berger, author of Jihad Joe, Americans Who Go to War in the Name of Islam, and I'm in the stream.
The increase in the number of foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq has become a major concern for Western governments. Europeans represent around about 18% of the foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq. According to the International Center for the Study of Radicalization, an estimated 2,000 fighters are believed to have joined groups like Islamic State or Al-Nusra Front. With many returning home, there are growing security concerns, and in response, European ministers have adopted an action plan. So today, we're looking at foreign fighters who go to Syria and Iraq and how to deal with them when they head home. To help us talk about this, we're joined by Gilles de Keikove. He's the European Union Counter-Terrorism Coordinator. Richard Barrett is a Senior Vice President of the SUFAN Group. It provides strategic security intelligence services to governments and multinational organisations. Daniel Kohler is a family counsellor and Director of Research at the Institute for the Study of Radical Movements. And Laura Zara MacDonald is Director of Connect Justice. One of the areas that she focuses on is the role of Muslim communities in counter-terrorism. So it's great to have you all here in the stream. I'm really intrigued, Daniel, by some of the families that you're working with. You counsel families, you counsel people before they may head off to Syria and Iraq, and also on the way back. If you could tell us a little bit about what drives them, what motivates them, where would you start?
So the first thing I would say is that it's extremely individual. So we do find generally a mixture of, I would say, positive and negative aspects or motivations. So there are conflicts within the family, there are conflicts at the workplace, in school, wherever they are, which is by the radical group or by the radicalizer, so to say, is interpreted or used to tie it into a global fight against Islam, a global struggle against Islam. They will even persuade these persons that their own family is not their family anymore, but basically part of the enemy society. And then there are positive motivations to do justice, to defend women and children in Syria, to change society, to become a hero, to help to re-erect the caliphate, to really do something for the Muslim Ummah, for the Muslim community. And usually these positive and negative motivations, they come together. It's very tricky that you get a set of very positive things to do justice, to defend the poor, at the same time to solve all your problems at home, at your job. You don't need all this school stuff, all the work stuff. You don't need to go through the conflicts with your family. You just solve that by going to Syria, and then you do something good, completely good. It's what you believe. You defend the poor, you defend women and children, you change society.
Interesting. So that's the sort of mindset or some of the motivations. Can you tell us? Yeah, go ahead.
I see, based on the experience in Europe, I see four main reasons. The first one is indeed the feeling in many parts of the Muslim world that the West has not been sufficiently supportive to the opposition in Syria. So many may feel that it's a duty for the Muslim to go there and fight. The second one is sadly the attractiveness with certain of the Al-Qaeda rhetoric of the caliphate, of the global jihad. The third one, I think, and it has been more and more relevant in the Sunni world, is the growing tension between the Sunni and the Shia. And we have seen the number of Saudi citizens going to Syria after the speech of Nasrallah in May 2013. And the last reason which was well described by a French author recently, who interviewed a lot of would-be jihadists, is probably not driven by any of the three main reasons. It's people who probably get bored of games on internet. They are just looking for the thrill of a war. They don't realize what they will be confronted with, and they just feel a bit alone in society. They look for bondship, for being member of something and give a sense to their life. So it's a bit of a mix of these four reasons, I think.
You know, Laura, Gilles just listed off a bunch of reasons. I'm going to give a few more from our community. Stiga just tweeted this in. They are brainwashed with religious belief, and these make them think that they're fighting for a just cause. There's also another theory. This is from a video comment. I want you to have a listen to this, Laura. Let me know what you think.
First thing EU governments need to understand is that the majority, the vast majority of them are not going there to fight, but they're going there for humanitarian reasons. The second is they're going for romantic reasons as well, because they're going for a sense of belonging, they're going for a sense of purpose. And so it's imperative to develop a counter-narrative within families, within communities, within cities, that will give them this sense of purpose, this sense of belonging, this identity that will prevent them from going to Syria and potentially create problems.
Laura, your thoughts on that? And is everyone going potentially to fight, or are there also humanitarian reasons?
I agree with Jan there, and I think the evidence is there that we have this empathy and a sense of wanting to do something and to help people that they see. You know, we see these horrific images and people feel impotent. But also we've got to understand that broader context. We've now got a generation who have grown up in a post-9/11 environment in which their entire understanding of how they are perceived, rising Islamophobia, racism, political disenfranchisement and social disenfranchisement, which are all drivers as part of this. And I think we've got to understand that human part of it, and absolutely that the grassroots is key. And repressive techniques, of course, we can look at dictatorships. They do work in the short term, but the policies and how we're going to handle this requires the grassroots to go with it. And that's I think we're at a really crucial moment right now.
I want to show you something on my laptop. This is from Islamic State recruitment video. It features a Canadian foreign fighter. I'm just going to show you just a little section to see who is actually going out there to Syria and Iraq.
I had sports, I had money, I had family, I had good friends, I had colleagues. You know, I worked as a street janitor. I made over $2,000 a month at this job. So it's not like I was some social outcast. It wasn't like I was some anarchist or somebody who just wants to destroy the world and kill everybody. No, I was a regular person. My brother.
I was a regular person. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, with that guy from Canada who you showed there, I think the Canadian authorities have a slightly different story of his past before he went off to Syria,
which may not be quite so.
Well, I think they according to the Canadian authorities, he'd been in prison, or he'd been picked up for extremist activity and so on, and he hadn't just been a sort of quiet street janitor, whatever he called himself. But that's by the by. I think it's true that many people do go for very good intentions, but I think one thing we should remember is if you go to Syria now and you go to join Jabhat al-Nusra or al-Sham or even the Islamic State, you're perfectly aware of what those groups represent, and you're perfectly aware that they're, as Gilles said, anti-Shia, or they're involved in very, very violent activity. So it's a bit strange to claim complete innocence. So I think we have to distinguish between the people who are going to join those groups and the people who are going for purely humanitarian concerns.
Daniel, can you share us a story so that we can kind of connect with who's going? Yes. Gilles, go ahead, and then I'll come back to Daniel.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I tend to agree fully with what Richard just said. Our information is that most of the Europeans going to Syria are going there to fight. Humanitarian reason might be one explanation. They may be moved by what they see on internet, and to be honest, Jabhat al-Nusra, but especially the Islamic State, is extremely good in its media campaign. And so they may be moved by that, but when they know exactly what they are doing.
So Daniel,
Femi, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Zara.
Sorry. No, I was just going to jump back to what Malaika was saying, and particularly the memes being used, very youth orientated. And okay, there may be some people with absolutely the intention, but often again it relates to a redemptive quality of being, mujahid in the redeeming factor. The way that computer games like Call of Duty are being used to connect that to a particular youth culture, the glamorization of violence, all of these things. Again, it connects to a human core.
So, Laura,
Daniel, I'm sure you've got some.
Yeah, so Laura, what are you basing that on, though?
Oh, well, the wonderful thing about social media is that we can see it live happening, the tweets, the conversations that are happening. But also when we talk to young people, on the streets of the UK even, those feelings, the idea of cleansing oneself through these ideas have not been, this is not a new phenomenon. And that background context is important to understand that. I was going to say, Daniel, I'm sure, has got some very pertinent examples.
Well, Laura, I'm glad that you kicked it over to Daniel, because Daniel, I want to go to you with this next tweet I'm getting. It's not just social media, it's also other online sites people are saying. This is from Abu Bakr, who says, what should happen is that authorities should try to block all online jihad sites that recruit youth by providing them jobs. Does this happen in the terms of recruitment, and does it happen online, Daniel?
Well, I got to say that at least for the German cause, the propaganda, the recruitment, advertisement for going to Syria and join ISIS, for example, runs 99% via Facebook and Twitter. So they don't have their own homepages like it was in the time back in the days in Afghanistan, where they had their own secret closed-off chat rooms and homepages. Now it's openly available, and they know exactly what they put out, that it's visible for everyone. And I've talked to families and young persons who were clearly on the path of radicalization to go to Syria and to join ISIS, and they were not believing even ISIS' own Twitter pictures they put out while they behead people or they cut people's hands off. They were just putting it down to enemy propaganda, even when it comes from their own Twitter account. So they were so convinced that they were going to Syria and live as in the perfect Muslim caliphate and do only justice and only defend the poor, that they were even dismissing these reported crimes that it's been out there, basically put out there by ISIS itself. So I don't know actually how many are sure 100% that they are joining a terrorist organization and they will be active in horrible crimes, and it's very individual. I mean, I've seen youngsters from families from all backgrounds, with education, with job perspectives, well-off families, from every religious background as well. Very, very good kids actually, and they've been going to Syria even after a very short amount of time, after half a year or 3/4 of a year, and there are very different pathways to go to Syria.
Gilles, what did you want to add?
Could I just add something on that? I think there's a very interesting effect with the social media for recruitment to Iraq and Syria, and that is that the people in the social media bubble just stay in that bubble, and they don't get very many influences from outside. And I think you had J.M. Berger on the program just a little bit earlier, and he's done some very interesting work in showing how the Islamic State manipulates some of the social media in order to be able to seem that there's a great deal of activity and discussion, whereas perhaps there's rather less. But nonetheless, I think that the people who go on the social media, they're intrigued by what's going on, then look for things to sort of confirm their decision.
All right, let me just share a couple of tweets with you. This one's from a Twitter handle called @Musa Serantonio. He says, I will be away for a while, but we'll keep this account open, inshallah. So if you contact me, don't expect a response. And then very shortly afterwards, he tweeted, I have arrived in the land of the Khalifa in Asham. So let us move on to looking at the numbers of foreign fighters who are actually heading out from France, over 700, UK, 400, 270 from Germany, Belgium 250, Netherlands 120. So these are very modest figures. Perhaps they're even higher. These come from the Soufan group. If we have all of these people heading across to Iraq and Syria, what is the best way to either prevent them or deal with them when they come back? Let's talk about prevention, Laura.
I think exactly. Prevention, we have to look at the underlying causes, and I keep saying it, but we do really need to understand those in detail. We can't have one-size-fits policies, and at the moment, when we have communities who are concerned that aid work, for example, is being criminalised, or people who may come into contact with all sorts of different kinds of fighters, not necessarily Nusra Front or IS, then they can be criminalised.
Right. So, Laura, understanding
as well.
isn't actually going to necessarily stop someone from going, or is it? Let's be pragmatic here.
Well, no, we need to have frank conversations in communities, but to have frank and candid conversations in communities is very difficult in the atmosphere in which we are currently living. For example, we have a local example recently where young lads had gone out and they'd come back, and we know that they'd bought a book called Islam for Dummies before they went. There's a lack of even religious understanding, basic religious understanding, and that is, I think, a danger where propaganda can feed from. To be able to discuss jihad, for example, jihad in a safe space to talk about, well, yes, it is a concept that is in Islam, but what that means, the details of it, in the face of a group in particular, IS, who are, promoting the idea of lawless combat. So these are all practical things
I think,
on that kind of level as well.
Who said I think? Gilles, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we have to work at local level and train what we call frontliners, that is teachers, parents, social workers, to detect early signs of radicalization so that we can mobilize a solution at local level. We have to also try to explain. We just said that some of these people don't realize what they are doing, so we have to explain what is happening there, the ugly face of this war. This is about blood, it is about murder, it is ugly. And therefore, developing some counter-narrative is extremely important on internet, and online as well. This is important that we connect with the different communities, and that you don't change that overnight. It's a long process. It's supposed that we are very open and engaged with these communities, and be open to families. And that's what some of our member states are trying to do, set up hotlines, make sure that parents can turn to someone, and indeed not fearing that it would just lead to the police straight away.
That is exactly the development that we have been starting in 2011 here in Germany. That we thought that it is absolutely necessary to train individuals like teachers or community police officers to spot radicalization. But what we have seen, taking the experience from an exit program and working in the far right, that basically most of the radicalization happens with the family watching. The family is the absolute essential key to understanding and preventing radicalization or going to Syria. So what we discovered and what we started is a family counseling program that completely focuses on the family. We support the family, educate the family, connect the family to all relevant actors around the family. We help the family to become a living counter-narrative. So we help the family to react in essentially
what do you tell,
Daniel,
what do you tell the family to do then? Give us an example.
Oh, so the first thing, we are a passive program, so families have to come us. They have to call us or write us an email, ask for help. The first thing we do, we give an assessment of the situation. If they really are having a problem with a potential violent radicalization process, or if it's a normal conversion to Islam, and then we help the family to avoid conflicts, to understand what happens, to educate them about the basic tenets of Islam. In the second case, if they have a real potential violent radicalization process, and we can see that, we try to figure out, together with the family, what the individual motivation, the driving factors for that specific person are, and then we act. Then we try to provide, together with the family, positive alternatives. We try to add colors to the black and white picture. We try to make it more difficult to get these very easy answers to say, this is right, this is wrong, I have to do that, I have to go to Syria. If that means solving family conflicts, if that means talking to the employer, talking to the teachers, if that means providing addresses or contacts to a charity.
So this is a major education process for the entire family and also people around that family as well. Let me just go back to our community, because we have 5 minutes left. So we want to move on the conversation just a little bit.
Right. Well, Richard, I want to share one of the fears from our community of what will happen when these fighters return home. This is from Tan on Facebook. She says they will come back and start trouble before we know it. They'll be bombing public places by using the knowledge and training they had while they were away fighting. So another person, this person on Twitter, has a solution. Graham says the people are going to go, so why not ask them to register first before going, to be debriefed rather than arrested on return? Richard, how feasible is that?
Yeah, I think that's difficult, because I think Laura said earlier that the position of most governments is that you should not go, and it may be a crime to go. So I think that it's hard to say, well, if you do go, nonetheless, give us your name. But I think that the essence of what's being said there is absolutely right, because if you just stigmatize everybody who goes as being a potential domestic terrorist, although in fact they're a foreign fighter, then you lose them. You lose all cooperation with them. And I think that you have to be able to ask them somehow, well, why did you go? What were you hoping to do when you got there? Then what was your experience? What was, where your expectations met, or did other things happen to you? And then, of course, why did you come back? If you came back because you were completely disillusioned or fed up or just exhausted, well, that's one thing. If you came back because you were thoroughly radicalized and believe you should blow up people at home, well, that's quite another thing. Right. Obviously, those latter group aren't going to talk to you, but you'll learn a lot from the former group.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we've
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, except Richard, that it's not because you come back disillusioned that you have not committed a crime in Syria. And therefore, we will have to assess when they return on a case-by-case basis those who have been involved. And the problem may be that we don't have the evidence, but those who have been involved in crime, in terrorism, in murder, even if they get back with good ideas and not mounting an attack home, they still have committed a crime. So we have to assess each and every cases. Some may need psychological support, and we have to provide this. Some will have the feeling that they have fulfilled their duty and they will need social support. But those who have been associated to crime and terrorism, they need to be brought to a criminal court.
Well, of course,
Laura,
I do agree with that.
Hold on a minute, gentlemen, because Laura was trying to get in. Go ahead, Laura, very quickly.
We do have also an untapped resource in that this isn't the first time that people have gone abroad to fight. Bosnia was a major pull for people in Europe to go and fight. They came back and resettled without, for the majority, fighting at all back in Europe, back on home turf. Similarly, we have Libya very recently, where people were entering and leaving again. Even we can talk, without talking about Muslims, people who go and fight for the IDF in Israel, for example. All of these people are obviously facing and have faced traumatic situations, wartime situations, and may well have committed crimes. Right. What we need to understand is what is it that makes some people, resettle, go back to their families and having fought, and others who perhaps are more of a danger. And understanding that nuance, I think, is crucial to this.
All right, so Laura and Gilles and Daniel and Richard, we're taking you all to our post show at stream.aljazeera.com. It sounds like there's a lot of understanding, a lot of talking to be done around this issue. I want to actually just head to my laptop here, because we talked to the UK Home Office to see what they were doing with this issue with foreign fighters coming back, and this is what James Brokenshire said. He's the UK Minister for Immigration and Security. People who are thinking about travelling to Syria to engage in terrorist activity should be in no doubt that we will take the strongest possible action to protect our national security. That's what one country is doing. They'll find out a lot more about this issue in the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Let me just tap in to our online community with Malika.
Well, this is something for the post show, discussing whether or not the impact of citizen stripping has an effect on returning fighters. One person, Norma, says no. Pretty emphatically. We'll talk about that in the post show.
All right. So that's the post show. You know the address, stream.aljazeera.com. I'm heading off next week for a trip across the Atlantic, so Malika Bilal will be taking care of you. What is on Monday's program?
We'll be talking about violence in Central America, Honduras in particular. We'll look at Honduras, where gang violence is driving people out of the country. Until then, we'll see you online.
Hello, this is the Stream's online post show. We've been talking about Europeans who are travelling to Syria and Iraq to fight with rebel groups. We're getting right back to that conversation. I'm going to start here with a British fighter who was recruited by Islamic State. Have a listen to what he's saying in their recruitment video.
Jihad, then everything will become clear to you. Oh, my brothers, living in the West, I know how you feel. When I used to live there in the heart, you feel depressed. Prophet ﷺ said, the cure for the depression is jihad fi sabilillah. You feel like you have no honor. Prophet ﷺ said, the honor of a believer is qiyamul layl. The honor of the ummah is jihad fi sabilillah. Oh, my brothers, come to jihad and feel the honor we are feeling. Feel the happiness that we are feeling.
So, Daniel, if you had somebody like that coming back to you, or a family of that person coming to you, where would you start?
Well, I got to say that most that come back from Syria want to come back. They have a reason to come back. They are massively traumatized, shocked. They have seen terrible things. They really want to go back to their former lives and families. I'm not saying that they're all on the path of de-radicalization almost, but most that we have seen come back because they have not found that what they were looking for in Syria. So when they come back, we obviously, if we can, try to prepare the family, try to bring in everyone necessary, psychologists for post-traumatic stress treatment, or we try to come up with a perspective, a plan. How do they want to go on in lives? What do they have to do? Do they want to open up a business? Do they want to study? What do they need to do to reintegrate, to really go back to do what they really want to do? And of course, we need to address security issues. Of course, we need to prepare the family to look out for certain things. How do they behave in certain situations? Or, if possible, if they, for example, do not follow with the plan, do not follow with the steps, for example, enrolling in university or meeting with a psychologist, if they are not doing that, that are clear signs that they are not really true about or honest about why they came back. And obviously, we help the family to connect to the police as well. We have contact officers we can bring in. And obviously, the police will be there first. There's no way around that. But then, for the second, we want the family to be there. We want a safe, secure, positive social environment where these returnees can enter, cool down, can think about things, can make plans, can find a new perspective for their lives, and can get help from the outside.
Richard, I want to bring you in here with two competing views I'm seeing online. This is from Azad on Twitter. He says, these are all potential war criminals and each should be thoroughly reviewed and vetted before returning to their normal lives. On the other hand, Stiga says, this is a wrong move because it will make them more hostile. And he's referring to stripping them of citizenship. He says, I think they should be rehabilitated and given back their citizenship. Richard, what does this rehabilitation look like? Step by step, what happens in getting them back to normal lives?
Yeah, I think that rehabilitation is a good word to use, but maybe a better one is reintegration into society, because the people who can be rehabilitated, which essentially means that they start seeing things in a more rational way, in a more practical way, and give up some of the very extreme radical ideas they may have picked up previously, those people probably moving towards some sort of reintegration, which will really underpin their sort of recovery, if you like, from the experience they've had. So the much more radical guys will probably go into the prison system or at some point, and then indeed make that prison system all the more hostile an environment for people who want to reintegrate into society. So that putting radical people in together with people who aren't so radicalized is very dangerous for the latter, in that they can be persuaded back into an even hardened view than they had before.
I'm going to show you a headline. It says, police, Brussels Jewish Museum shooting suspect linked to Syrian jihadists. So Gilles, I'm just wondering, what is the level of risk and danger for the home countries of foreign fighters? Is there an overreaction? Is it the right reaction? Is Europe prepared?
I think we are prepared and we don't overreact. I think it's not irrational to think that a small number, and I insist on a small number, will want to commit terrorist attack. They have been through a military training, an ideological brainwashing they have friends all over the jihadi world, so a huge network, and they have a level of tolerance to violence which has been increased significantly. So, and some may even have been trained to mount attack when coming back home. So that's where the challenge is for the security service to assess for each and every case the dangerousness of the returnee. And we have seen that with Nemouche. Nemouche, the guy who committed the terrorist attack in Brussels, he killed very quietly a 4-person and just left and run. And that is, I think, the good example of what may happen. So we have to reduce that to a minimum, and that's what we are trying to do by improving the way we detect returnees, the way we assess them upon return.
Well, Femi, you asked if EU countries would be prepared. We have a video comment here from someone who says EU countries may not be doing enough to stop it in the first place. So, Laura, I'd like you to have a listen to this and let me know what you think.
With the bulk of the estimated 3,000 Western foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq coming from EU member states, this is a pertinent issue that the EU and its members should quickly address. First, by placing legal restrictions on those attempting to join the Islamic State, Jabhat al-Nusra, and other extremist groups. But secondly, and more importantly, by addressing the underlying socio-economic issues that allow these individuals to be radicalized and pull them into the conflicts in Syria and Iraq.
Laura, do you think he has a valid point, and how do you even go about doing that?
I think the idea that somehow taking passports away, preventing people from travelling, these kind of policies are actually counterproductive and also not necessarily effective at all. And actually that idea of the preventative work is of course crucial, but we've got to be careful that we don't imagine that it's all, just like the young man from Canada talked about, perhaps he had an ideal narrative of himself, but this idea that people are just economically deprived. I think the idea that people feel they need to go and fight and that political violence is the way forward is indicative of a broader problem that we have in society in making people feel part of our societies, in allowing people to feel empowered, and that's a major problem. And we're never going to get rid of the idea that people want to do jihad, and neither perhaps should we. The problem is how we, exactly as Gilles was talking about, how do we understand who is going to be the danger and who is not? And also we can't forget that someone like Richard Dearlove, the ex-chief of MI6, has himself said that the politicians and the politicization of this issue is dangerous, because not only is it perhaps exaggerating the threat in the first place of returnees, but it also plays into the propaganda of these groups by creating this mystique, by creating the drama that is so easily created through Twitter. It doesn't take so many people doing horrific pictures of beheadings to create a particular atmosphere. We're also in danger of going again down the very line that these particular groups want us to, and create polarization in communities, create a sense of stigmatization that by being Muslim there's something wrong with us, by believing that sticking up for those who are being oppressed is somehow a criminal act. Those kind of things need to be addressed, and what concerns me is that the policies that are beginning to be spoken about in Europe more broadly would be very damaging at this juncture, where we still have the opportunity to get people on board.
Let me just check in with Daniel about something. Daniel, how long have you been a family counsellor for returnee fighters? How long have you been doing that job?
Since 2011. We started in 2011 as the first family counseling program for relatives of jihadists or Islamic extremists, or however you want to call them.
How do you measure your success so far? Do you feel happy about the work that you're doing, and you feel like, okay, this is making a difference, or where are you?
Absolutely. So we have been so successful in that work that we are currently exporting the program to other countries like Canada, the UK, to the Netherlands, to Australia even, because we got calls from these mothers, from Canadian mothers, from Dutch mothers, from British mothers that found us online, and they have not such a program in their country, so they call us directly, and we are overwhelmed by the interest. So the first measurement of success is, do you reach these families? Do these families call you and want your help. So, and since 2011, we have taken over almost 100 families, we alone, and we work with partner organizations in Germany too. So of these 100 families, I would say that about 40 to 50 have a security relevancy or are in some way related to Syria or foreign fighters or on a path to become foreign fighters or returnee families. And we have at least 20 families where we can show that soft intervention prevented the relative from voluntarily going to Syria. So they were changing their plans. They were even de-radicalizing. When you can see that they are going back to sports, that they are going back to listening music, that they are that the family conflicts disappear, that they are not criticizing their mother for drinking a glass of wine or just listening to music, anything like that. When all this tension disappears and they are not talking anymore about going to Syria, they're not obsessed with the conflict in Syria anymore. Or when the returnees say, I've made up a plan, I want to open up a fitness studio for Muslims, for example, and they enroll in university, they take classes, they go to psychologists, they talk to the police. It's a perfect assistance in reintegration, and we have many families where we can show that basically by simply providing the family a tool to understand what's happening there, how they can assess the situation, how they can react when they are provoked by the relatives in certain situations, right, so that they do not drive them further on the path to radicalization. Simply by speaking to fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, aunts, teachers, employers, to give them a tool to understand what's happening there, you empower them to become that individual counter-narrative. I mean, they've been told continuously by the radical group, the radical milieu, listen, these kuffar, the non-believers, they will never understand you, they will suppress you, they will react in a panicking way, they will try to take away everything from you, they will try to take away your passport, which is a classical narrative. Allah approves the ones He loves most. So anything that comes in between you and a path to jihad is a proof that you're on the right way. So we help the families and the employers and the teachers, everyone that's involved, to react in a counter-narrative way. We basically show them how they can emotionally support and address the individual motivations on the path of radicalization, while simply destroying the ideology or the radical narrative from within.
All right, so that's Daniel Kohler. We also had Laura Zara McDonald, Gilles de Keikove and Richard Barrett. As you can hear, the conversation has really only just got started. So many approaches, so many takes. But I really appreciate, guests, you giving us your time this afternoon, and also to the online community as well. Do you have an ending conversation tweet that you want to share with us?
This one might be a good wrap up for someone who said this is an important conversation because it's important to integrate these fighters back into EU society, because mostly they will return distraught and lost.
I will not have the last word on this post show because I'm heading off on the other side of the Atlantic. So next week, what will you be doing, Malika Bilal?
Well, one, I know you will be watching.
I always do.
We'll be talking about Central America.
Sure.
Part 2, we'll be looking at Honduras in particular, where gang violence is driving people out of the country. Until then, we'll see you online.